Today, I'm diving into the unfiltered, behind closed doors world of Facebook in Sarah Wynn-Williams' Careless People, a cautionary tale of power, greed, and lost idealism. This book you've heard about, but maybe haven't heard about because it's been suppressed so much. But it is a very top of the moment book with Meta's trial going on right now about some of the implications and the events that happened in this book. So I just finished this about a week ago. I thought it was very interesting and eye-opening. And it's an insider's view of what happened at Facebook. So if you haven't read this or heard about this, it's trying to be suppressed because it's a little spicy, if I had to say. So with that out of the way, my name is Zach, and I'm a lifelong reader of mostly science fiction and fantasy, but I do tend to read everything in between with a lot of personal development and business, comics, manga, and books like this. So Careless People, I heard about when it came out because there was some early reviews, and if you're chronically online like myself, it's on Reddit, on technology threads, but it was being suppressed by Meta because, yeah, this book is kind of a tell-all memoir of some of the dirt that was going on behind the scenes during Wynn-Williams' life as a policy analyst manager at Facebook during some of the consequential events that shaped Meta how it is right now. So the big picture view of the book is I really enjoyed some of the personal anecdotes, and because it's being suppressed, you kind of have to play devil's advocate or kind of that conspiracy theorist hat on. Is it being suppressed because it's untrue, or is it being suppressed because they don't want to admit that it's true? Because like any memoir, recently read some other memoirs where it's obviously told from the writer's perspective. So they're going to view things with rose-colored glasses of the good times and the bad times, when in reality, of course, it maybe wasn't quite so bad as they make it seem, or maybe it was worse. And yeah, are they embellishing on certain ideas to make the book sound better? But some of the early stories of kind of the hijinks that are going on behind the scenes, you kind of have to believe them because the picture that Wynn-Williams paints is so realistic that she gives these details of trips she goes on with Mark and the team. And it's just so detailed that I was reading this thinking, how can it not be true? That she describes just things that no one else would know unless you were there, with Mark. Well, obviously, as a writer, she could have heard some of these things secondhand, and she's just embellishing, the juicy water cooler gossip she heard from someone else, and she's kind of crafting into her own story that she was there. But what if it was true? So some of the kind of bombshell allegations are around Sheryl Sandberg and kind of the way she treats her inner circle. Kind of on the not so spicy side was when her book came out, Lean In, that she recruited and hired people to basically just do book promo tour stuff. So even though they worked for Sheryl at Meta, or maybe I think it was at one of her foundations, they were basically just glorified PR kind of people focused solely on making Sheryl a celebrity. And during that time, thinking back to things that were happening there, she was a celebrity. That the time that Lean In came out, she went from COO, which is already a pretty up there job, to be now this, leader of women in business and how women can be better leaders in business. So some of the allegations kind of knocking her down a notch are pretty spicy. Specifically, I'm talking about some of the allegations of come to bed in the plane that happens, I think, once or twice in the story, where Sarah Wynn-Williams, the author, is invited to retire as in go to the bedroom with Sheryl. And it's apparently common for Sheryl to kind of develop these motherly relationships with some of her subordinates, and it makes you a little creeped out. And yes, that's one of the big bombshells in there. And some of the others are just how the people act. And the interesting thing, of course, seeing this in the news with Mark Zuckerberg on trial, is Mark's transition from kind of that just nerd he always was at the start, and then how he slowly, not, I wouldn't say radicalized, but came to realize the importance of policy, and but not just policy, but public opinion, I guess is the right way to put this. And this is, again, is this Sarah Wynn-Williams, because that's her role to be the policy person? Is she making this more of a big deal that kind of she influenced Mark more than she actually did? Or was just the gradual change in Mark, that he went from someone solely focused on the engineering side of Facebook and making a better product and just fully, giving the engineers whatever they wanted. Then he slowly kind of started to realize, I think, again, this is kind of framed at the time when the Facebook stock took a big plunge, and the only way they could kind of, expand from there was to go international, and going international was going to necessitate, finding new markets. And in order to do that, navigating the policies and the politics of these other countries. And it's a very interesting story from a business standpoint, not just, from an engineering technical standpoint, of how the business evolved to go from creating a product, but as we kind of know, treating the people on the platform as the product, and recognizing that time on platform and engagement is what they're selling. So there's some examples of the advertising teams, using this knowledge of how they can hyper specific target people. They use an example of someone who posts like a selfie on Instagram because it's a Meta owned product, that immediately after posting and deleting a selfie, that the user could be shown products that kind of reinforce that self-image, because they know through their, again, the massive data that Facebook/Meta generates, that deleting a selfie is maybe an indicator of low self-esteem. So you can target that with a specific ad that's targeting, people by demographic, age group, and also low self-esteem. So you can, sell them your, maybe a weight loss product or a beauty product that they'd be vulnerable at that moment. So it's a little creepy to, know what granularity that Facebook has over its users. And also that they know that they have that granularity, and that they're selling ads actively on that promise to advertisers that, hey, we can target your product when the users are most likely to buy, based on emotional states and any other number of factors. So it's very creepy, very interesting. This also reminds me of a lot of the ideas in here crossover with Yuval Noah Harari's Nexus, about kind of the coming AI kind of storm, because he also uses the example of the Myanmar Rohingya genocide, which Sarah Wynn-Williams goes over in this book, where Facebook, as the title kind of implies, was pretty careless in their assignment of censors and government, and how they handled that situation, and how they used the algorithm, and how the algorithm, the Facebook algorithm, rewards kind of not violence, but controversy is the word I'm looking for, where I think controversial posts get pushed up, and it can lead to genocide, as the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar was an example of. So it's a pretty interesting book, eye-opening book of a lot of kind of the juicy details that maybe you wouldn't get anywhere else. So if you're interested in tech, and if you work in tech, I think it's a book that it's at least worth knowing about, and at least having a passing knowledge of some of the things that have gone on in the space. That, yes, it's in the past, and hopefully things are turning around for the better, especially with things on trial right now. But the trial's more like a antitrust thing with Instagram, not necessarily policies, but it's also a cautionary tale, as the title implies, of power at the top, and what these companies, these big data companies, that, yes, they're social media, but they have so much data on us, and how it can be used not really against us, but it can be used in maybe less careful, nefarious purposes, and how it's just business, and, they're just trying to turn a profit, but at the expense of maybe our youth's attention span. Some other books like Anxious Generation, and Are We Doing the Best for Society? This used to be one of Google's, core tenets was do no evil, but can you really say that when you're targeting ads and allowing things in your platform that may be questionably morally? Or from the alternative view, which some of the characters in the book advocate for, it's just business, that it's the market kind of regulating itself, and this is how society is evolving, and it's capitalism at the next stage. This is late stage capitalism. So that was my thoughts on review of Careless People. I thought it was super interesting. I think it's a solid 4 out of 5. It's obviously not like a 5 out of 5 best book ever, but it's if you're in the tech space or interested in social media's effect on others, I think it's worth reading and checking out for some of this, this behind the scenes, behind the curtain look at one of the biggest companies in the world and how they got to where they are, and the things they did, and how the people actually are behind the scenes. The Mark Zuckerberg, the Sheryl Sandbergs, all these top brass at Meta, and what they're actually like in real life. So thanks for watching and have a great day.